Dig a little bit deeper on all of these issues through our panel discussion. First up, we're joined by an internationally recognised human rights, equality and inclusion expert who's the founder and principal of Intersection. A former senior executive at the Australian Human Rights Commission, she led major workplace cultural reforms, including Respect at Work and Set the Standard, and now advises boards and organisations on creating safe, respectful and inclusive workplaces. This speaker is also a commissioner of the Victorian Parliamentary Workplace Standards and Integrity Commission. Would you please welcome Natasha de Silva. Make yourself at home. Our next panellist is Associate Dean, Indigenous Leadership and Engagement at the UTS Business School and Professor of Indigenous Policy at the Jumbunna Institute. An Aboriginal descendant of the Fowler family from the Sydney region, she's a leading workplace diversity thinker. In RiseUp, she co-authors the First Nations chapter, drawing on the work of the Centre for Indigenous People and Work to challenge leaders to move beyond the rhetoric and address systemic barriers. Would you please welcome Professor Nareen Young. And our final panellist is an Olympian, two-time Commonwealth Games decathlete and respected leader in disability, accessibility and inclusion. He's held senior executive and board roles across community, sport, mental health, transport and disability organisations, and is recognised for his work advancing opportunities for deaf and hard of hearing people. Would you please give it up to welcome Dean Barton-Smith, AM. And of course, facilitating and moderating our panel is the wonderful Faye Calderone.
Oh, classic Faye. Okay, thank you. That was incredible. I'm composing myself after that. I've looked up to Kate my entire career, and to hear those words, I'm so deeply grateful to you. Thank you. This panel, they're the ones that contributed to this book, and I am so grateful for your contribution, and I am so keen to hear from you. I'm going to get stuck in with just some easy questions for you, okay? Tash, you're up. Excellent. Just call you Your Honour. So the central theme of Rise Up is that inclusion is increasingly being challenged. How can leaders address this increasing backlash in their workplaces?
I think, as Kate rightly pointed out, we're in a week where poor leadership or non-inclusive leadership is on show. And I've been reflecting on why that might be the case, and obviously that's the space that I work in. And in thinking about that in the conversation tonight, I was struck by actually two things that I think drive this. And the first thing is that I think it's about people's lived experience. And I think there are a lot of leaders who don't have lived experience of exclusion. Why don't lots of leaders have experience of exclusion? Because lots of leaders are from a very dominant group. And that's not to say that white men can't be inclusive leaders. I know plenty who are. But I think it's just really hard if you don't have the lived experience to have it at the forefront of your mind as a leader. When instances like this week take place, I think what is clearly missing are two things, as I said. The first is accountability, and the second is empathy. And I think that we haven't heard leaders step into that space, be accountable and be empathetic. And I think that happens for a range of reasons. One is actually at its most base level around protecting reputation. whether that's individual reputation, organisational, institutional reputation. There is a propensity to seek advice from crisis comms people and to then go down that path of protecting reputation. And that doesn't benefit anyone. And I think thinking about how those might be impacted in the workplace by harmful behaviours, and actually believing people's experience and starting from that place of empathy is actually the most powerful thing to do. So when I go into organisations and I hear about backlash from staff, one of the things that we do is share experiences. So in focus groups, share experiences about the lived experience on the ground and what that's like. And you can see light bulbs go on for people, empathy coming to the fore. So I think while it's a burden to share those stories, I think it's also really important that we listen to them when people are willing to share those stories and to have that empathy and to express it and to lead with it.
Absolutely. That's such a brilliant answer, and really you deserve a book yourself, Natasha. I think it's coming soon. Nareen, I mean, one of the best parts of the book is the co-authored chapter. Well, it's not co-authored, it's a self-determined chapter that was written together with you and the Centre of Indigenous People and Work. It is the one chapter that I told Taylor and Francis, Routledge Group, as a global publisher, and credit to the commissioning editor who agreed that it is untouchable without your consent.
Thanks, Faye.
And one of the best things I think in the book are the 10 truths from the Gary Young report and how you have adapted them and provided guidance to leaders from them. Can you please share them with your audience, and especially in this context?
I couldn't reel them off, those 10 truths.
Don't have.
Josh, can you Google them?
I know.
You don't. Oh, we should have had Josh here.
Let me be more pointed. They challenge organisations to stop asking Indigenous workers to adapt to workplaces and instead ask workplaces to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. And I suppose from there, what is the hardest truth for Australian leaders to adapt, to confront in the context of the Speak the Truth report?
I think it's taken a really, really long time, and it's ongoing, for us to convince Australia that we can speak for ourselves. And in fact, you rejected our fundamental right to have a voice for ourselves a couple of years ago. And that was 60% of people who didn't think it was appropriate for us to have a self-determining entity that represented us. And so when you talked earlier, Faye, about having to convince people, and people like Natasha and Kate and you and I have been convincing people for a really long time. I get that you're sick of it. I really get that you're sick of it. And can you imagine how sick of it we are? Of simply seeking recognition as to our basic humanity and capacity to self-determine. So the 10 truths, and where Gariella is different to most of the work out there, is that it is entirely self-determined, and we designed that survey ourselves, and we carried it out, and then we did the analysis, and we devised the 10 truths. And what I think is important about it is that it was the very first time that Indigenous people were asked what our workplace experiences are. And that was 2020. And we all know that the issue of Indigenous people and employment is one that lots of people talk about. One of the features of the colony is to talk about the bludgeoning blacks and the programs and the special programs in organisations. For us to self-determine around our own workplace experiences, for us to truth tell about, and for us to own the narrative about our own employment experiences over 238 years, because women down here in the harbour were in fact the first traders, with the colonists, and Josh's family have records, is it 1838, of his mob, of the rations they were provided on the mission that they lived on. My family lived on a mission in Camperdown, where instead of payment, of course, all of our people were paid rations of sugar, tea and tobacco for our work. So,
Quite a long.
As long as the taking of the land, right? This prevalent myth that we're bludgers is out there, right? So I would, in respect, I would say to Dean, the other people that I find absolutely does my head are not afforded the right to self-determine and to speak for yourselves, are people with disability, and drives me crazy. And of course, blackfellas with disability would have to be lowest on the food chain in terms of capacity to speak for themselves and self-determine. So I think our 10 truths provide an opportunity.
Absolutely do. They're all in the book, and they are outlined like
and
I said.
Cannot
Great.
reel them off,
No.
maybe 1 and 2.
It was completely unfair. It was a question without notice. They're in the book, and they are properly particularised, and like I said, they actually form part of the RISE framework, with huge thanks to you. Dean, you and I met a little while ago at a volunteers conference, and I watched your spectacular keynote there, and I was have been a fangirl since. I am so honoured to have you contribute to the chapter in the book, and look, I'm talking you up, all right? Just shoulders back. Decathlete 2 times, Commonwealth Games, Olympian. No, you are a true champ. But the things you talk about in the book are real messages to leaders around managing sentiment versus what does true inclusion look like and what does courageous leadership look like. I'd love to hear more from you about that. What's the difference between performative inclusion or managing sentiment and what really shifts the dial?
Thanks, Craig. You hear me?
Yeah.
That's good, I can't, but thank you anyway. Thank you. I've always had this problem with speakers. People have no idea that I had no idea you can't hear me, so that's great. I'm really excited about, because when Faye reached out to me, I think it was maybe like 2 years ago, I think it was an interesting time about a certain person overseas who didn't believe DEI was appropriate, and I knew how much devastating that will be to a whole range of people who hear that fought for so long to be accepted, to be included, and then will take a person who had the potential to be in a immediate spotlight to just put it down within 1 or 2 or 3 sentences, and it would extraordinarily painful to hear that, and I think it's really, really sad that one person's view is not to reflect the whole of the world's view, I believe. And I think that, ironically, that Faye was writing it, I feel like, fire in my belly was like, oh, we've got to write this, we've got to put this down, we've got to really have to rise up, as you rightly said. And I think they realise that we haven't had something written in that form to formally give people a guidance what to do about those challenges. I guess as a leader, inclusion is a leader not much about being able to do it when it's really good, or how valuable inclusion is, but when it's being tested, when we need to justify the value of it, that's when real leaders should come forward to be able to guide and explain people about why this is important. And I guess the colleagues here have mentioned about the lived experience. They bring in more than just what we do in work. We know how to do accounting, we do legal work, we do day-to-day stuff. But it's much more been involved in that. From a lived experience, the life journey, everyone's journey is very, very different. And we've all experienced what good and not so good experience. And I believe as a leader, and I think over time, my family or my youngest daughter always said, Dad, you often live by the quote, the standards you walk past is the standards you accept. And I think that became more my mantra going forward. So when I've been offered to be asked to be on the board or chairing an organisation or leading as a CEO, etc., my first instinct is about the values. What values do I have? And that organisation, do they share that same value? Do they share that same belief? Is it more than just money? That organisation needs to make money. But I've seen for over 35 years some really, really good people had left, not because of the money, not because of the title, it's because their values were conflicted and they feel like they didn't have a voice, they didn't feel like can't be able to contribute. And I guess that's where I'm always conscious that even though I'm fortunate to be in a leadership position, I've always told my team, look, I'm still one of you. What are we not doing right here? Are we excluding someone inadvertently? Really raise those questions to say, all right, have we inadvertently or unintentionally left someone out who went here? Really have that deeper discussion because it's all about trust, as I believe. And you mentioned about the incident with the AFL incident, this would be a great 40 team, fantastic, massive $1 million sponsorship, but it takes one little action or attitude and can really bring down the perception of that organisation, etc. And that's a challenge for leaders. And I think from a board level as well, we're responsible for governance, we're responsible to making sure the culture of the organisation we lead is appropriate. Are we valuing people? The value of diversity is a rich experience and you can never learn enough in this space. So I think it's really important that when push comes to shove, you sit down and think, okay, what's my gut telling me? This doesn't feel right. And it's inflicted, and that's where you feel, if I can't talk it up, then we have a problem with the organisation, And that comes from the responsibility from the top down, really. We're board. Most things we like leaders, a CEO or managers, etc. It needs to come from the top down. The old proverb, the quote, the fish wash from the head, it's very true. If we allow those behaviours, etc., inclusion is not embraced and see the value of it, then it has a massive roll-on effects from there. So.
I love that saying. I always use that too. There are positive sayings from that perspective, but as lawyers we tend to see the fish rots from the head more commonly. Natasha, I'm going to move back to you, and I want to pick up this concept of intersectionality, and I will try and avoid referring to that interview too frequently, but like one of the things that in that interview I got asked the other day was, so what do you mean? So like it's gender and it's race and it's like how many other things? And I'm like, yeah, it's all of it. It's like all of it. I'm like, yeah, it's all of it. But intersectionality isn't something that is something that needs to be leaders need to be cognizant of, but it's not something that should overwhelm them, and we need to be looking at it from the identities that people bring to the workplace, and we can't just focus on gender and go, we've done really well on gender. We'll just take one frontier at a time. That was a very long, long-winded question. But can you talk to the concepts of double jeopardy and what people face, and why we should be addressing them holistically and together?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Faye. So I think I don't want to downplay the success that we've had in the gender equality space. I think it's incredibly important. I know no one here wants to do that. It's been much slower than any of us would like, and frankly, it's been incredibly hard fought. And so I want to recognise those gains. But I think to your point, women are not a homogenous group. We have not lived the same experiences. And, my experience of the workplace as a woman of colour, Nareen's as a First Nations woman, a woman with a disability, will have different experiences in the workplace. And I think there are structures. The structures and the laws have actually driven us to try and do inclusion, one protected attribute or identity, as we call it more commonly, at a time. So we've got a Sex Discrimination Act, a racial discrimination, certainly at the federal level, Race Discrimination Act, Disability Discrimination Act. So to see it as one siloed protected attribute, and that has driven the systems that mean we're counting things in a way. So, how do you identify when you go into a new workplace and you're filling out your details about yourself? Do you identify as a person of colour or a First Nations person, a person with a disability, a diverse sexuality, etc.? And by the time you get what is happening with that data and where is it being collected, I can pretty well tell you it's being collected to say, well, we've got X amount of people who are from the LGBTIQ+ community. We've got X amount of women who work here. But could I tell you how many gay women who work? I couldn't tell you. And that is the part of the problem, is that we don't have systems that have helped us see the complexity of each other as humans. And so understanding people's experiences and how diverse they are, it shouldn't overwhelm. But I think as leaders, what you want to be doing is appreciating that there's more to someone than their gender, and there's a lot more that you probably can't see that you don't understand. And I think as someone who's worked in the human rights space for 25 years, I think for me the hardest thing has been to actually be able to talk about the impacts of racism on my life, my personal life, my career, and the thing is that people can often tell you or think that you're being a bit sensitive when you hear something that might seem relatively minor. But what you don't know is if that's the 100th time I've heard it today or my lifetime, the cumulative impact it has when you do face barriers is pretty significant. And so I think when you are, as a leader, and engaging with the workforce and thinking about the kind of place you want to create, being as open as possible and being empathetic, as I said before, I think is really important. But you have to lead by example. And I think leaders who say one thing but don't actually do it are the ones that don't have any credibility. And I see a lot of that in workplaces, or I see perceptions of that in the workplace. And so you actually have to demonstrate that you want to hear. And if you're asking people to tell you, then you need to listen and you need to action, or explain why you're not actioning, but you can't just leave it out there hanging. So I think it is about not being overwhelmed, but understanding that we're all complex individuals. We all come with our things. Yes, we're here to do a job that we hopefully enjoy doing, and to be productive and to make friendships potentially and have connections. But that there's a lot that we do leave behind, and sometimes we can't always leave it behind, and sometimes it will impact who we are on any given day. And so having empathy for that, I think, is important.
That's so true, and that concept of belonging is so critical when you've got intersecting identities as well. I will go to you on this one because Nareen, or Prof I should call you, one of the pull-out quotes from you in the book is that you've argued that we've had the business case for diversity for decades. It is time to return to the simpler proposition: inclusion is a human right and a leadership responsibility. How do we get that into every boardroom across Australia?
Well, given that it's been 50 years since the introduction of the Racial Discrimination Act, you would think that it would have been permeated by now. Looking at you, people industry, looking at you, human resources sector, that in Australian workplaces, and I'd argue that it's actually the lack of communication and conveying the requirements and the application of the various acts in workplaces that has led to such a dearth of understanding in the community as to the basic requirements of the acts. To be racist, to be ableist, to be sexist in the Australian workplace is unlawful.
Yeah.
Now, someone's had courage of that for the last 50 years and someone hasn't done their job. So I think that we require boardrooms to actually do their job and for it to be conveyed to them that they need to do their job. Doesn't seem really complex to me. I'd like to acknowledge the comments about intersectionality and how much backlash we get about that. I have a range of backgrounds, as do many in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Part of that is CALD, and I would also argue, and I know you and I have had lots of conversations about this, Faye, that the intersection of race and class is in fact something that we need to have a lot more discussion about in the diversity context in this place. I want to pick up on something that Dean said about you can never learn too much. And to me, I don't kind of get why people don't find diversity interesting and fabulous. And to your points, Kate, about listening and in like terms of maybe I'm just a big Doris and so I just like learning different things about people, but I don't get it. I really don't get it. But to go to there's a group of us as diversity leaders who are actually getting together at the moment to reinforce our commitment to the human rights frameworks because as I think I said it to the camera, in terms of the DEI, we don't even talk about DEI in Australia. We don't say DEI, we say diversity and inclusion. What's this DEI bullshit, right? We are not the US. And that's not how this place has traditionally operated. We do have had for the last 50 years a human rights framework, or longer in terms of the Sex Discrimination Act, but that's 55, isn't it? 80, yeah, oh, okay. That's your expertise, Natasha, not mine. So I think writing this book's really important. I was at an event celebrating 25 years of Reconciliation Australia last Friday, and our UTS Chancellor Michael Rose addressed the elephant in the room and said, and he's also chair of Reconciliation, as the co-chair, the white co-chair of Reconciliation Australia, and said, we need to name it. We need to name it. It's a very dangerous time. And we all need to take responsibility for resisting it, because this place that we share, we need to nurture what's good about it.
So true. And it is about safety and human dignity, and we need to bring it back to basics, which is also the law.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question because I'm conscious of time and I want to just soak up all the Dean I can get. Dean, I want to go to the statistics that we spoke about in our chapter, which is that I think it was 56% of Australians with a disability are employed, which means there's a lot unemployed, but only 33% are employed full-time. And then when we look at autistic adults, I think 54% have never had a job in their lives. There seems to be a lot of activity around disability inclusion or accessibility, as we call it. What are we getting wrong at the entry level? And when they are in the workplaces, this is the second part, can we have a chat about this concept of universal design that I know you talk about? Just a quick one.
Okay.
Just.
Okay, good. I think.
Do you want to take the podium?
No, I think employment issue. I think it's about unconscious bias. I think people lack of knowledge, fear of the unknown. I can tell you, I applied for a job where we've heard this story as well. You have to work 3 times as hard to only be half as good, right? So for me, I never see myself with disability, but I knew that perception. So I applied for a very senior job at the time, and I had a master's degree. I've done CEO across 4 different organisations. I've actually chaired a not-for-profit organisation of $140 million a year from $40 million 9 years earlier, and I still couldn't get the job basically for something that was not CEO, probably executive level, and not to discredit the person who got it, but I've often think about perception. People look at think, well, if I walk with the cane, they'll look at the cane, not the person, And I guess we all know how that feels, etc. And we've got to keep justifying. And I guess it's disturbing with the unemployment rate. And I know that there are a lot of very, very, very capable people who will put in the hard yards and really deliver. They give it a go, have a chance to have a crack. And I go back to one of my jobs as CEO where I had a person, and at that time I wasn't aware about neurodiversity at that time. We always judge by how we see the person, maybe they're not quite right, etc. And I had this person, and we were looking at utility transport, logistics basically. And when I walked in, we were doing it using Excel, and we had over 150 volunteer drivers. We were managing something like 1,000 trips a week, and we're doing everything by Excel. By this one person who has a photographic memory of everything that goes back 10 years ago. And I said, we need to move this to more of an online system, management system. Now, she was very, very apprehensive because, I've got all this knowledge, I'm the only one who could drive it. And I said, yes, but what happens if you're sick? What happens if you need to take a holiday, We're going to collapse with your knowledge. So there was another person there who was very, very, very thorough in his work, and I didn't quite capture at that time. And we had to implement a massive online logistics system. And this person was very, I'd like to have a go at it. I really want to have a crack. And I did to my operations manager, I said, this guy here wants to have a go. Let him have a go with it. And it was about 6 months, and he just went right down to dot the I's and cross the T's. He was so thorough. And I look back and I realised it's very, diverse people are very, very strong, and they're very orderly, they're very specific. You need that person in your area, your job to be doing that. I know accounting people are like that sort of people, very thorough, got to be accurate. I always believe you need to focus on this strength-based approach, not the weakness. And I think this person there, he just thrived because I gave him the space and able to realise that I've never been given an opportunity like that before. And I just look at you, I just look at what strength you have and let them flourish. And I think people need to have a crack and be able to do that space. And yes, I think I've got 2 or 3 people on my team already who work for the NDIA, for the communication side thing. And I sort of picked them up in the interview very quickly. And I said, I need you in my team. I need someone who's very thorough, specific, and be able to make us look good, etc. And they just love it. They thrive in that. But I think we need to change that now to a perception of looking at beyond the person, about their strength, what they bring, and how they can grow. And I think the unemployment could improve a bit more, but it goes back to the culture, how willing you are, but open to inclusion, to learn from another area. Now, we've got, say, 50% of the population are women, right? And then you've got 25% have disability and growing. You've got the Asian population that's growing, that's massive. So why is that part of it? First Nation groups, etc., is growing. Diversity, culture, cultural background is just growing. So why aren't they at that table? Why aren't we learning that? And more importantly, everybody have money to spend. So from a marketing point of view, if we're not reaching out to the 25% of people with disabilities who are actually buy a house, buy phones, spend a lot of money, and you're not making it inclusive and accessible for them, then you really are missing a lot of opportunities there. Having them inside the organisation, you really opened up about things you never thought of. It became a very, very powerful thing to have.
That's so brilliant. Thank you so much. We are well out of time, and I think only 25% into my question list. But all their insights have been captured beautifully in RiseUp, and you can purchase a copy. No jokes. Please hang around to speak to the panel. They'll be having some drinks and food with us. But I'm going to hand you back to Tracey.
Thank you, that's all good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Faye, for moderating that panel so beautifully. How about another round of applause for our stellar panel? Gosh, there was so much in that, wasn't there? Natasha, we need accountability and empathy, and the importance of getting that segmented, detailed data. Nareen talking about boardrooms need to do their jobs, and the intersection of race and class, which is something that's not talked about enough. And Graydon, I remember you and I did a deep dive on that over a glass of wine at Faye's first book launch. And Dean, oh my goodness, Dean, I could have listened to you all night, like all of you. It's all about trust, what's my gut telling me, universal design, and a strength-based approach. That was such a rich panel. Thank you so much, all of you. If any of you, well, all of you, would like to buy a copy of Faye's book, she will be selling them and signing them straight after. Stay around, have a drink, have something to eat, chat with everybody. It really has been one of the most extraordinary book launches, actually leadership forums, that I've had the privilege of attending and emceeing. So, Faye, thank you so much again. Congratulations on Rise Up, and we'll leave the last word to the woman herself. Please welcome back Faye.
I learned from the last book launch, and I made a list of the thank yous because it was a little bit more scattered last time. So I'm going to, you're going to need to bear with me. It's a long list, but this doesn't happen without an incredible group of people to thank. First and foremost, thank you very much to Hall & Wilcox for hosting this incredible event. I'm so grateful for the firm's support in backing this book, backing my previous book, and backing the cause that is diversity, equity and inclusion. We have our people in the room today, Antoinette Totter, who is our diversity, equity and inclusion leader. I learned a lot from her personally when I held the chair role. I learned more from her than she did from me, and that's testament to the great people and the great work that this firm does to ensure our people and our communities thrive. Thank you to Graydon for that speech. Thank you for being so kind, generous, compassionate as a leader, and just supporting tonight, and also to my partners in the room tonight. I think we've got Aaron Alison Baker, our practice group leader, and all my team. Thank you for your patience in allowing me to have a love job when our days barely give us enough time for the day job. I know that it's a lot, but I'm so grateful, and I'm so grateful to celebrate with you. To our events team, they are the best in the business. Therese and Hayden and Laura and so many others who made tonight incredible. Thank you so much for putting this incredible evening together. And I am, in awe of your contribution only a few days after our National Key Client event. I also want to thank our team in particular and my partner in now turned partner, Claire Curley, who is in the room. Oh, there you are. Hi. I am just, thank you for giving me 12 years of your life. You are incredible. It is my honour and just such pride. I'm so proud to call you my partner, and I hope that we can make many more together. To our on-site bookseller, Abby's Books, thank you for getting the book into the country after a global hack of the local distributor. I got my copies in Glaysville at 3:45 today, so a little bit late, but they moved mountains to get this book here. Again, and most importantly, to the contributors of this book, everyone that you've met tonight, that panel, your grace and honesty and lived experience and advocacy and leadership. I'm in absolute awe of you all. And especially Tracey, thank you for not only your contribution to RiseUp, but for, like I said, just being my mentor and my person in this book journey. It is a weird and wonderful world. You're a consummate professional, and I'm so grateful to call you my friend and for your time and support tonight and always. Kate, I've loved and admired you my whole career. To have you endorse RiseUp and to have you stand up here is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. Thank you so much for doing that. But more importantly, thank you for your passion and your commitment to our cause and ensuring that our profession progresses. It is exceptional. You could sit back and enjoy the ride at this stage, but I know that you are unstoppable and relentless in your pursuit to make this profession a better place for those who follow, and I'm very grateful for that. To my family, the Greek Cypriots in the room, sadly I don't think my mum is here. Dad's recovering from surgery, very, very sad, but he is okay. But we have, as is the tradition in Greek Cypriot world, the village here representing the family, because it takes a village. Thank you very much, and my love and thoughts with Mum and Dad and everything they have done to get me here today. To my husband, Peter, we did say at the launch of Broken to Safe that the next book we were going to write together. We didn't quite get to write the whole book together. You slacked off a bit, but you did feature in the cat cart, and the neurodiversity chapter is all yours. It's turning out to be a favourite, but whatever. Congratulations on the launch of your business, Reach My Potential. You have dedicated your life to ensuring people with disabilities reach their potential, and I hope it is a great success because of what it means for them, and selfishly because I can then retire. Not going anywhere great, and just so you know, it's going to take a while. That business, it's a lot, slow burn. Finally, to my boys. Where is he? Did he fall asleep? Oh, my 15-year-old showed up in a suit. I was really excited. Anyway, Christian, Elijah, and also my nephews, my sisters here, Thomas and James. I hope this world is one day one where you can thrive and belong, and not just for my children, but for all your children. That's a wrap of the launch of RiseUp. Please stay for a drink and enjoy the hospitality.